In this movie, I'm not going to tell you in a PBS voice that if we all just come together, we can make the world a wonderful place. I'm going to tell you the opposite. That if you embrace individuality, you can attain true liberty. I'm going to show you that when people come together in collectives, whether they are corporate or governmental, the result is almost always a loss of individual rights. I argue that individualism can be moral, and it's this moral individualism that made America the most free and prosperous nation in human history. Free humanity's battle is not only with elitists. Our battle is against the idea of collectivism itself. The philosophical battle lines are drawn between those who will force their will on others and those who will not. This is the core philosophical difference between those that believe in individual liberty and those that support collectivism in its many forms. I'm going to move fast with almost too much information, so this is not something you can watch casually. If you want to read articles I show on the screen, I suggest you pause or look them up on your favorite search engine. Finally, I wrote the music and narrate myself. If you don't like my voice or my music, I really don't care. I'm an individualist who is self-fulfilled, and I'm just not going to conform to your opinion of how I should do my own work. If you don't like it, you can go and do your own movie however you like. Everyone knows inside, something has gone terribly wrong in this world. Some repress this feeling, while others disagree over the cause of our affliction. Are we just laboring in the birth of an era of social justice, peace, and equity? Or are we on the descent to something far worse? Is it possible that each day we march closer to a new slavery? Some people seem to think life will continue on in relative stability, but I'm here to show you that they are wrong. Governments and social structures rise and fall. None has stood the test of time, and none ever will. Governments live by the sword. History is a repetition of tyrants, slavery, war, murder, and rebellion. It is a cycle as certain as death. America's founders created a government that they hoped would hold the forces of tyranny at bay. Government is like fire. It's good when it's kept in its place, but if it jumps its barrier, it can burn down the whole farm. This movie was created to educate on the true meaning of liberty. Liberty means different things to different people. Who are you seeking liberation from? You could be seeking liberation from God or religion, your boss and landlords, government, or even the white male oppressor. Different worldviews spring from how we think of liberty. For instance, to be liberated from God, you would work to undermine morality in the culture and replace it with an alternate social code. While many colonial settlers came to America to be liberated from the church in Europe, to practice religion without interference. We will discuss liberty at length later. What has happened, America? Nearly 80% of jobs are now service jobs, mostly low-paying. Total U.S. debt is now over $58 trillion. This equals a debt of $732,000 per family, while the average savings of a U.S. family is $5,700, enough to live off of for maybe a few months. We import $740 billion worth of products more than we export. That's money leaving our economy. And what do we get in return? Cheap trinkets made by serfs and slaves. Sure, American products cost a little bit more, but at least your kids will have a country left for them. Just wait until you see the cost of universal health care as all the baby boomers retire. Maybe the youth could overcome the monumental obstacles in their way. That is, if we had not already dehumanized and degenerated them. I asked a high school graduate what type of government we had, and they reply, like freedom? Don't ask them what freedom means. No. Freedom's like when I can get an abortion when I want it. They are being taught crap in the public schools. They come home and get hardcore mind control from the TV. The parents are busy attempting to fund a lifestyle that's completely frivolous and are too dumbed down to teach them any life skills anyway. Go and ask a teenager or young adult, have you ever planted a seed? Have you ever shot a gun or dressed an animal? Can you cook over a fire? Can you heat your house without electricity? How about balance a checkbook or save money? You know what they do know how to do? They know how to swipe a credit card. They know how to use a fast food drive-thru. They know how to roll up their sleeve, smile for the camera, and bend over when they're told to. It's a culture of weakness. Being strong is not playing sports. It's not dressing a certain way or acting tough. Strength is the rugged individualist. He's warm and well-fed when the power goes out. He knows how to keep animals, hunt and forage food, grow a garden. These are the core skills that have allowed mankind to flourish. Imagine no possessions or property because we're all neo-feudal serfs. Imagine there's no countries. Now we're all subjects of a massive global bureaucracy. And no religion too? Now the state is God. But I will never join you. I will never become one of the hive. It's a world where behavior is adjusted by the barrel of a gun. Without the profit motives, workers just don't produce. It's a world where every movement and conversation may be monitored. All Christian concepts like marriage and raising children will cease to exist. It will be as it usually is, an elite ruling class and a servant class. Maybe this time we'll be called associates instead of slaves. The ruling class will be equipped with high technology, securing the iron fist grip on society. The masses will love their servitude. They'll be given toys to play with, heroes to idolize, and pills to make them happy should they ever be troubled by a deep thought. These are the same forces as the forces of old that required human and child sacrifice. They even worship the same pagan gods sometimes. Inside, we're all looking for a leader, someone to heal the ills of the world. How many of your stars have fallen? How many more tyrants will we empower? Could we one day put a man in office to lead a world government? No man can be worthy of such a title. Our fight should be to make sure this can never happen. But men around the world work towards erasing national borders while building a global infrastructure. Men are crafting their image to emerge as your personal hero. We desperately want to be told that everything will be alright, like a child comforted by a father. But they know man's most inner desires and appeal to them. The men who seek to rule you become your gods. Has America accepted an elite class as their rulers? Is Obama a cult of personality? Will the next Republican star be your hero and savior? Elevating a flawed man above us is a huge mistake. Politics draw the worst in society to it. These are people who desire power and the ability to bully people around. They are people who want to be worshipped. They want people around them to fulfill every wish. We have already exalted them. Do you see them as public servants? When the scandal breaks, a star falls. The god becomes a mortal man, no better and usually worse than ourselves. His career is over, never to be seen as a god again. What shall become of us if we continue down this path? Caesar Augustus did not have high technology. He didn't have modern sociology and psychology. No PR men with slick TV advertisements. He had no guns or drones. He didn't have cameras and microphones on every street corner. The Roman citizen did not all carry around personal GPS locators that can be spied on. They did not have Google to compile their every thought and desire. They didn't have credit cards to easily indebt themselves. They did not sit in front of a propaganda box half the night eating GMO corn. We are birthing the new tyranny, a beast like no other, that no man can fight against. The technology is there for a system of control, a fist clenched tighter than any other. Many of the people are ready to accept it, more and more each day as the propaganda takes hold. This is not just a possible scenario. This is the course of history. We are globalizing at an ever-increasing pace. We are losing liberty at an ever-increasing pace. There is more and more man heroes, more propaganda, more diversions, more intrusive technology. Then there's the economy. This is not going to fix itself. We are going from point A to point B. It's a single path from liberty to tyranny. This is America and the world's future, and we need to educate people. How far away is the day when all your movements are tracked? All the new phones have GPS, and most everyone gladly accepts it. It's already being phased in. 15 years ago, you would have been called a nut to suggest that a large percentage of people would be carrying GPS trackers by 2013. Then they have a microphone and camera too? You can use them to face scan people and scan barcodes and use them as money? They can even make a psychological profile on you from your search engine searches? This is exactly what we were telling you was going to happen. It's the elephant in the room. Everyone knows it's there. They are so naive, so trusting in government, that they cannot see it's going to be used against them. It's slavery marketed as freedom. You know we're moving away from a paper money system to a credit system that can be completely tracked. As economies crumble, the public will be sold this to catch tax evaders and to inhibit the drug trade. In an age of hero worship, how far away is the day when we accept a dictator? We have a Humpty Dumpty economy that cannot be put back together. Will it be long before we're facing hyperinflation or deflation? We're despised by the nations, not only for our former liberties, but for our Wilsonian disregard for national sovereignty. How long will it be before planned French-style revolutions turn into regional and global wars? Through unethical science and pseudoscience, will our tampering with God's creation soon unleash famine, pestilence, and death? We are here at this time for a purpose. We are the horsemen who warns the world of what is to come. Our white horse which we ride is the purity of our message. Armed with a bow, we fire arrows of truth. We have set out to conquer ignorance, and a crown of righteousness is the reward for all who stand up for moral individual liberty as we descend into global tyranny. First, we must understand what our liberty is and where it came from. 300 years after the crucifixion of Christ, the Roman Empire was in decline. Constantine knew he was not able to quell the rising tide of Christianity. He converted the empire to Christianity because he had to. It was a co-opting of the Christian movement. True Christianity was paganized by the Roman Church to make it appealing to former pagans. Pagan holidays and symbols were adapted to Christianity. This Holy Roman Empire presided over the Dark Ages of Europe. I won't go into the ugly history here. The Protestant Reformation began in an attempt to reform the Catholic Church, which the Reformers called corrupt and full of false doctrines. First, the Catholic Church was collectivist in nature. Only the Church could interpret the Bible. It claims that no one is allowed to interpret Scripture contrary to what the Roman Catholic Church says. In contrast, Martin Luther thought salvation depended on individual faith. Also, men should have self-determination and self-responsibility. In essence, that Jesus was the moderator between God and man, not the church, priest, or pope. This fueled a rise in individualism in the 1500s. Later, the Enlightenment was a humanist challenge to the Roman Catholic Church in Southern Europe. America's settlers were largely made up of Protestants fleeing Catholic and Anglican persecution. They were coming to a place where they could worship God how they wanted. In 1785, of 4 million American colonists, under 35,000 were Catholic. America became undoubtedly the most individualistic country on earth. This individualism is based in personal responsibility. The person will have to answer for himself before God. The Declaration of Independence revolutionized liberty with the statement that Americans are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. In contrast, the French Revolution was influenced by Enlightenment humanist thought. The outcome illustrates the importance of God-given rights versus government-given rights. Independence under God versus independence from God. America is known for its individualism, while Asian cultures are known for their collectivism. A person with individualist tendencies is motivated by self-improvement and prefers to be seen as unique, while someone with collectivist traits needs to belong to a group to feel accepted. Approval seekers who care about their image and what people think about them. Individualists are trailblazers who are highly productive and responsible. Collectivists are conformists who follow fashions and trends and adapt their style to the group. Not all individualistic tendencies are positive. This is why morality is imperative in a free society. As with our liberties, America's moral individualism is becoming a relic of the past. It has been subverted by collectivists and replaced with a degenerate, godless individuality. The new individuality is not an individuality of ideas and creative works, but an individuality attained by purchasing products. Buying the product is supposed to make you unique, but in reality is usually an act of conformity. Many advertisements use celebrity endorsement and bandwagon techniques. These are collectivist concepts that you need to fit into the group or be like someone else. You cannot buy individuality. Individuality was given to you by your Creator. Individuality is embracing the person that God made you. Individuality is knowing you are just as valuable as anyone else, even the rich and powerful. I don't need to be like a star because I like who God made me. I have my own thoughts and opinions, and I respect that others have their own. I don't need you to conform to my opinion because I am unique, and I don't want everyone to be like me. I want them to be themselves. Collectivism is the Catholic Church declaring you a heretic because you have a different opinion than killing you for it. Collectivism is the Soviet Union mass murdering political opposition, priests, or anyone else who did not conform. Collectivism is the bully kid who mocks you for wearing unique clothing or talking in a unique way. They beat you down. They fear and hate anything different than themselves. Collectivism is the concentration of the evil in man's hearts. It's born from the arrogance that one person has the right to tell another what to do. Individualism embraces people's differences. It's inherently anti-racist. A racist is a racial collectivist. He conforms to a racial group as a value. Collectivism is that tight-knit group that shuns outsiders. Moral individuality is the liberty that America was founded on and what we fight to preserve now. Is there a conspiracy to create a new world order? This hotly debated question will define whether each of us is on the right side of history. Someone has been deceived, but how can we be sure it's not us who have been lied to? The first problem is that, like freedom and liberty, there is more than one definition of a new world order. Is the New World Order a collectivist conspiracy to create a Marxist world government? Is the New World Order a capitalist or fascist system run by white America and Britain? Or is the New World Order just the promotion of democracy worldwide, a noble attempt to eliminate war and promote justice, equality, and peace? This is the problem that must be decided within each of us. We must be on the side of truth, otherwise we are deceived. The world is in a state of confusion. Information has exploded. With so many lies, conflicting facts, and wild theories, how can we find truth? History is filled with conspiracies. Conspiracy is not at all uncommon in history. Regimes are routinely conspired against and overthrown. Most assassinations are the result of conspiracy. White-collar crimes are often the result of people conspiring, as well as political cronyism. A conspiracy theory should be defined as something that is not admitted by conspirators and does not have substantial factual proof. An alien or reptile-dominated New World Order is a conspiracy theory. When we go around spouting theories, we discredit ourselves and discredit the truths that we have surrounded the theory with. The status quo version of the New World Order was put forth by Woodrow Wilson, making the world safe for democracy. It was a shift from the ideal of our military only being used to defend territory and our stance of staying out of foreign entanglements. Wilson was elected on a peace platform, but it's an undeniable documented fact that he then used the top propagandist, psychologist, and artist to convince us to enter World War I. Did we go to war to protect our territory? No. We went to war because Germany sunk a ship, and questions remain about that event. It was later proven that the Lusitania was carrying munitions, as the Germans claimed. You can read more on that on Wikipedia or somewhere else. The point is that Woodrow Wilson's democratic New World Order rose out of conspiracy, falsified events, and the world's most intense propaganda effort ever. And what did Woodrow Wilson bring us? The income tax and the Federal Reserve Act. Both were brought about with trickery and under false pretenses. But individualist America was not ready for a world government. The League of Nations failed, and the propagandists went to work. This democratic New World Order is the concept a politician is trying to invoke when he proclaims a New World Order. This New World Order, with its nation-building, interventionalist policies, used to only appeal to the left. But along came the neocons. The neocon movement was started by former New York liberal intellectuals, some of which were Trotskyites who opposed Stalinism. These former leftists always have adhered to the concept of a democratic New World Order. My former State Department contact was a neocon who was proud to work towards this goal. Most of its supporters do not use the term New World Order. They use terms such as globalization or democratization. Many of them do truly believe that they are doing a noble thing, and they will make America a safe place from hostile enemies. This New World Order is not a theory, but it's a fable. It's just the PR version that is sold to the public and the low-level officials. It's the version that politicians use in the public for the masses. Look at what its own intellectuals write about. Was it a democratic New World Order that Woodrow Wilson was working towards? Let's look at some of the facts about Woodrow Wilson. Wilson saw the Constitution as pre-modern, cumbersome, and open to corruption. Wilson favored a parliamentary system for the U.S. Wilson believed America's system of checks and balances was the cause of the problems of American governance. Wilson was particularly critical of the House of Representatives. He signed the Espionage and Sedition Acts, which criminalized speech that cast the war or government in a negative light. Wilson had mail censored and monitored library checkouts. Wilson's tax acts made the top tax bracket 77%. Wilson openly admired European fascism. He rejected the declaration that our rights are God-given. Wilson considered people not individuals, but moving parts of the organic state. Wilson's system was elite government dressed up in democratic trappings. When Wilson enacted the Committee on Public Information by executive order, he brought together intellectual elites in a massive effort to mold public opinion. This is the essence of Wilson's democratic world order. Elites make the decisions, then brainwash the public to accept it under the ruse of democracy. This noble New World Order is simply the slick repackaging of an elite-ruled New World Order. That brings us to the other two concepts of the New World Order. So is it Marxist or capitalist? Inherently, the New World Order is anti-individualistic and is clearly collectivist. Individualistic government is a limited, non-intrusive government, whereas the New World Order is a global bureaucracy. Why then do corporations and people who were made rich by them also support the New World Order? It seems an apparent paradox that capitalists would be working for collectivism. Why would Ted Turner, a man who has built a media empire, the largest private landowner in America, work tirelessly for socialism and collectivism? Because for one, the ends justify the means. He already is an elite. He would only gain power in an elite-run society. Corporations are collectives that lobby government for advantage over individuals. Media corporations like CNN are part of the military-industrial complex that Wilson created. It's run by propagandists, not journalists. These new journalists mold the public's opinion. That is their job. Large corporations will exist in the New World Order, whether they are taken over by the state or just regulated by it. Family business will cease to exist. The individual power will be assumed by government and corporations. Capitalism is free market and individual driven. The New World Order cannot be free market capitalistic, but just as fascism and National Socialism, it can be corporate. The rise of the corporation was the collectivization of the American economy. Yet when Walmart closes down your main streets, you blame capitalism. Main Street was Adam Smith's capitalism, while the corporation is the economic tyranny that always seeks to squash liberty. This leaves us with the real New World Order. It's rule by the intellectual elite. It's socialism for the masses, with the ruling class that is exempt from many of the rules. It's the tyranny of old on a worldwide scale, with the power of modern technology and propaganda. It draws from Plato's Republic and Marxism, but builds upon them. But is there a conspiratorial group working to bring about this collectivist New World Order? There would need to be several actions taken to eventually bring about a collectivist New World Order with a ruling elite. Cultural identities would have to shift towards a sense of global citizenship. Christian morality, in the American Protestant sense, would need to shift towards a morality defined by behavioral scientists and psychoanalysts. Globalists would need to be in control of media, education, and political parties. People would need addictive diversions and to feel like they have a choice. Economic regulation would need to be a norm. Private property rights would need to be diminished. Police and cameras on every street would need to become commonplace. citizens would need to be disarmed. These and other things would need to have been planned by multiple people to qualify as a conspiracy. But is there a central plot to bring about these things? I can assure you, yes there is. It's evident in the writings of philosophers and intellectuals. They see themselves as Plato's philosopher kings. They are Enlightenment intellectuals who have learned a bit since the French Revolution. Note that the Enlightenment intellectual is synonymous with Illuminati. Woodrow Wilson was particularly fond of German philosopher Friedrich Hegel. The Hegelian dialectic applies perfectly to the end of the Cold War. Thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. The synthesis in this case, a world in preparation for world government. It should come as no surprise that Wilson hired Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, for his propaganda outfit. I'll discuss him and fellow propagandist Walter Lippmann later. These are people who do nothing but study and research how to manipulate and control the masses. They influence the masses by influencing group leaders, such as CEOs, politicians, pastors, movie stars, journalists, etc. They are offered access into the world of the elite if they work towards the PR version of the New World Order. Maybe the lure is environmentalism or feeding starving children, sometimes, but usually the power of access is enough for them to go along. As we have already concluded, the PR noble version of the New World Order is a lie. The celebrity champions some cause they see as noble, such as gun control, but they have compartmentalized it as a cause, and they do not see the big ugly plan. It becomes their true religion. They are surrounded by other believers, as the PR priest preaches the collectivist dogma. Soon they embrace the true elite New World Order and work to position themselves as an elite. I don't know if you call that a conspiracy, but I sure do. They are made to feel the masses are animals that need to be controlled, while they, the elites, are the next step in evolution, the enlightened man. The enlightened man has thrown off the chains of religion and nationality. He sees Adam and Eve's sin as a blessing, an act of evolution. Man will rebel against God and set up his own world order. He sees world peace occurring when religion and nationality are no more, as they are the cause of all war. But there will be no peace. Oppressive government makes war on its citizens, and the enslaved rise up against their masters. Yes, there is a conspiracy if you want to call it that, but don't look to one racial group as the necessary core. All men are deceived. None of them shall escape death and judgment. The converts are deceived just as the philosophers are deceived, and the masses are deceived. It's the evil that lies in man's heart, and evil itself that is behind the conspiracy. Evil that can assume any racial form, and has been constant throughout the ages. This evil works to be concentrated through world collectivism. We are on the front lines of the war. It is a war for your soul. Are you going to defend the liberties of you and the people around you? Will you accept the right of the individual to live how he chooses? Or will you still seek to dictate how others live? I'm not talking about gay marriage and abortion. These are wrong according to the only moral code that has ever produced a society with vast individual liberties. Child sacrifice and sexual perversion are hallmarks of ancient tyrannies. Demoralization is the road to tyranny. If you support limiting speech, religious freedom, guns, homeschooling, property rights, you are the New World Order. If you think you can force me to get medical insurance, you are the New World Order. If you think you can spy on me and wiretap me without a warrant, you are the New World Order. You have already consented to the idea that the government can take my God-given rights. Much of the world is deceived into being for wealth redistribution. If there was a referendum, would more than half of the world's population accept a world government that promised peace and equity? Yes, they would, but they have been deceived. The America that long stood opposed to global collectivism now appears to have accepted it. In the late 1800s through the early 1900s, Sigmund Freud's theories on the unconscious mind were fundamentally changing the perception of what it means to be human. He was influenced by Plato and Darwin, viewing man as an animal that needed to be controlled. He, along with many psychoanalysts, fled European persecution and came to the US. Bernays got Freud's works published in America and began pushing Freud's theories to government. Bernays is considered the father of public relations and was one of the founders of modern propaganda. He was part of Wilson's Committee on Public Information. Bernays, in the first chapter of his book Propaganda, says, "In almost every act of our daily lives, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental process and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world." And he is referring to this as a positive thing. The first chapter of his book is called Organizing Chaos. Obviously, he refers to the public as chaos. He says, "Democracy is administered by the intelligent minority who know how to regiment and guide the masses." Bernays believed propaganda and the perpetual control of people's identities and emotions was necessary to prevent chaos and conflict in society. His intellectual elitism that he shared with Freud had made him come to see people as irrational actors, like a wild beast. Plato had similar thoughts about the general public. Bernays treated most of his staff and family like servants, and sometimes like trash. This pride is symptomatic of someone who sees themselves as an intellectual elite. The pride seduces their mind into believing that they have the right to control other people, and in Edward Bernays' case, the right to brainwash people. Bernays not only made it fashionable for women to smoke, but he deceived the American people to support several military actions. It was Bernays that led the propaganda effort to fluoridate the water. Bernays saw the motion picture as the greatest propaganda tool ever created. Television proved an even better propaganda tool, being pumped straight into every home. Propaganda was to be interwoven into the TV and movies to cause gradual change in public perception. Corporate power multiplied at the expense of small business, due in part to Bernays' tactic of mass manipulation. One of the problems the intellectual elites were having was that people were too self-reliant. They resisted the level of participation in the system that the elites desired. Americans were too well-armed and independence-minded to be overrun by a Stalin-style tyranny. Americans were to be controlled through their desires. Through movies and TV, American life would become a fantasy. The spectacle of the fantasy concealed the true intent of social engineering. The pesky Christians presented a big problem to the intellectual elite. They rejected the fantasy. They preferred to make a pie from scratch over buying their cake mixes. They farmed and grew their own food, and they did not frivolously spend their money. They rejected the entire concept that the measure of a man is what he owns. Another mass manipulator was Ernest Dichter, who once had an office across the street from Freud. He long preached against what he called American Puritanism. Dichter, the founder of motivation research, had found that subconsciously women saw the bathing ritual as a symbolic spiritual cleansing, like washing away sins. This explains the soap opera. They made shows for housewives that showed images of romance, adultery, crime, and murder. The housewife would identify with characters and subconsciously personalize the experience. Then bang, on the commercial break, soap ads would offer salvation from her subconscious sin. Simply put, the soap cleanses away the dirtiness she felt. If we live in an age of logic and reason, you sure can't tell from the advertisements. Advertisers dropped advertising a product's practicality in the 1920s and never looked back. Almost all advertisements appeal to subconscious fears and desires. You want to be like the celebrity. You want to be part of the crowd. Be a good parent. Come be part of the fantasy. It's not about the usefulness of the product, it's more about the image the product will give you. Corporate capitalism is only a means to an end to the intellectual elite. They appealed to our desires. Now most people are in debt to banks. They intentionally subverted our morals, and we have become the animals they said we were. We have lived their fantasy, and now we've lost our capacity to survive. America has been dehumanized, demoralized, and stripped of her talents and skills that once covered her. With our trust abused and our minds molested, will you dust yourself off and fight back, or will you fall in love with your oppressor? We need to start to look for the propaganda in movies and television and tell others about it. On TV in the past 15 years, we've seen more and more homosexual characters and more straight characters joking about being gay. And poof! All of a sudden, people think gay marriage is a lovely idea. In 1996, 27% of people approved of gay marriage. And in 2011, voila, it's up to 53%. That is a successful propaganda campaign. And have no doubt about it, that's exactly what it was. You will do what the TV tells you. You'll think it's your own opinion, but it's an opinion you have been conditioned to accept. Clever stereotypes TV characters portray build prejudice in the viewer's mind. The father is lazy and dumb. The wife is wise and always right. The Christian is repressive, holier than thou, and hypocritical. How many times will I be expected to cheer for a hero who violates rights and due process with no regard for constitutional liberties? How many movies will I watch with the same archetypes and symbolic themes? Like a magician, they distract us with eye-catching visuals, while the true but hidden purpose is slipped into our subconscious. Subliminal messages keep you fixated on the screen. Your brain waves change, slipping you into a highly suggestible state. You suspend disbelief, but not just to get you suggestible to the commercials. The real purpose is the acceptance of the underlying propaganda. You'll believe the individualist is a terrorist. You'll believe the constitutionalist is a racist. You'll believe the Christian is a serial killer. You'll believe anyone who doesn't conform to the system is a criminal. You'll believe anything they tell you. If you're not aware of any of this, turn off your TV and free your mind from their control. Find clarity in your own thoughts and ideas. If you're strong in your mind, dissect the media, research their tactics. It's more diabolical than you think. As mass manipulator Walter Lippmann said, the public are to be spectators of action. You labor for them and come home to be sedated and brainwashed by them. McCarthy paid the price for suggesting Hollywood was infiltrated by communists. The truth is, the media has always been in control of collectivists. For them, TV is the engine of change. Their new world order will come into being step by step through brainwashing campaigns on TV. It is gradual. They can't change minds in a day. But one day, they will have ruined America so much we will beg for the security of their slavery. Educating people is the only hope for them. With alternative media heating up, it's hard to stay lukewarm. We need to target the people on the fence and educate them about liberty. The conditions for liberty are as delicate as the conditions for life. It does not spontaneously occur. It has many conditions such as morality, individualism, and responsibility. All other paths lead only to more oppression. We must learn to accept others' opinions and reject the need to force our opinion on others. Only collectivists require others to conform to an opinion. Moral individualism has room for all opinions, because at its core is the belief that all men will answer for themselves before God, and that regenerate man is an omnicompetent citizen. Since Walter Lippmann thought man was an untamed beast, he called the omnicompetent citizen an impossible ideal. This is a citizen who is a non-elite who can make informed decisions. There is only two sides in this war. The side of the moral individualist, the only path to liberty in a world of man's governments. The other side is the many varying degrees of collectivism. It is the world, the natural state of master and slave. The rulers imagine that they are gods. The masses told they are nothing more than animals. Woe to the lukewarm. You want liberty, but you refuse to accept all of the conditions for it. We're calling you. Be a light in the darkness, and assume your purpose in this world. As their world order takes hold, and we are imprisoned and killed for speaking the truth, we will be a living sacrifice, and vengeance will be poured out upon all of man's corrupt governments. America, we must resist collectivism and restore individual liberty. We sit only a few events away from a global system with total control over the individual. We must educate the people about liberty. We all can see some aspects of manipulation of our unconscious mind, but how pervasive is this manipulation? Wilson Bryan Key, who was a university professor of communication studies, wrote several books that painted a picture that was so disturbing it shattered many people's perception of modern society. He writes in his book, The Age of Manipulation, most still desperately cling to the delusion that they are thinking for themselves, determining their own destinies, exercise both individual and collective free will, the great myth that underlies democratic ideology, that advertising works in the interest of the consumer, and perhaps the greatest self-deception of all, that they can easily discriminate between fantasy and reality. He goes on to say that there are 6 audio-visual techniques that subliminal information is communicated: figure ground reversals, embedding, double entendre, tactioscope displays, low-intensity light and low-volume sound, lighting and background sound. Key said the vast majority of advertising is subliminally embedded with words and images of sex and death. The ATF wrote in a definition of subliminal advertising, one prevalent form of subliminal technique was described as the insertion of words or bodily forms, embeds, by the use of shadows or shading, or the substitution of forms and shapes generally associated with the body. The consumer does not perceive them at a normal level of awareness, and thus is given no choice whether to accept the message, as is the case with normal advertising. ATF holds that this type of advertising technique is false and deceptive and is prohibited by law. The law only applies to alcohol advertising, and this law has never been enforced. Research has shown that seeing subliminal embeds causes a measurable EKG response, as well as a heart rate, brain rhythm, and galvanic skin response. Key has also said, the ad and PR industries indoctrinate and control culture, and through culture, the perceptual constructions of the general public. Like others who have studied propaganda, he thought that nearly all of TV and media was propaganda. This is coming from a man who was once a speechwriter for Dwight Eisenhower. He claimed that subliminal manipulation was not only to sell products, but also used by the elite to manipulate the public. Without getting too deep into the science of subliminal messages, sex and death are used because psychoanalysts have found that sex and death are associated with our strongest unconscious drives. They are also taboo, which causes the information to be repressed into the subconscious. When we understand the pervasiveness of advertising and media, we should contemplate what effects a constant bombardment of subliminal sex and death has on us and our society. Seeing subliminal messages causes a drive response. This puts you in a lower, instinctual state of mind. For example, can you write an essay if you're very hungry? When a drive is activated, it's almost all you can think about. In society, what you get is most people living to fulfill drives, such as sex, overeating, security from death. This keeps the masses from the higher thought processes. Don't you wonder why it's so hard to wake people up? They're worse than asleep. They're in a state of mass hypnosis, as well as living in a fantasy constructed for them. Many people think they have woken up, but they have awoken from a dream within a dream. They realize some things are wrong in the world, but they fail to realize everything is wrong in the world. We are sheep, ready to follow whoever whispers the sweetest lie in our ear. Subliminal messaging is part of the elite-run New World Order. It helps keep the masses doing what they are conditioned to do. It is the psychological control grid. But it is a part that can help us out. It's unique in that it can be observed by each person. Their own eyes will be the proof. No need to rely on ambiguous statements from elites or speculation. I've shown thousands of people subliminal messages, hundreds personally. They will always see what I point out. But the real curiosity is the reaction. Nearly everyone is excited when they see it. About half the time, within 5 seconds, the smile has turned to a look of horror. See, I just messed up their worldview. The fantasy signal shut down for a moment, and the dark reality was witnessed. It's something they just can't handle. They want to stay in the fantasy. I see it in their face and eyes. The truth was revealed to them for a moment, and my job is done. My purpose is only to break down the walls of the false reality, so you can glimpse the reality and truth. Unconsciously, you already know. You know something's not right, but you just can't put your finger on it. Even if you believe there is an elite-controlled New World Order, you still feel it's worse than you know. When you grasp it, it's a sickening feeling. The ruthless manipulation is so pervasive that there is no escape. I'll solve a mystery for you. George Bush was told by the PR intellectuals to pronounce Saddam, Sodom. Not only is sodomy a taboo sexual act, but it also associates him with Sodom in the Bible. See, you thought he was just an idiot, but it was actually an effort to manipulate you. Modern culture is a religion. We worship stars and heroes, no different than the Romans, Greeks, and Babylonians worship stars and heroes. Holiday means holy day, and we culturally celebrate pagan holy days. Easter is the name of a pagan goddess. Easter was the queen of heaven in ancient Babylon, and her husband, Baal, the sun god. The rabbits and eggs are symbols of fertility, which Ishtar, the goddess, is associated with. The ham is eaten in remembrance of Ishtar and Baal's son, Tammuz, who was killed by a wild pig. These archetypal characters were used to control ancient people. Using Carl Jung's modern understanding of archetypes and symbolism, Hollywood weaves these archetypes into its TV and movie characters, enchanting us and tapping into what Carl Jung called our collective unconscious. This collective unconscious, Carl Jung believed, was inherited at birth in every person. Every person has these archetypes and symbols built into their unconscious mind. The elite believe, and apparently have always believed, that through manipulation of the collective unconscious, man can be controlled on a mass scale. The collapsing tower is archetypal. Perhaps it's so effective because it's a symbol of castration. Castration symbology has been a staple of advertising for a long time and is discussed at length by Freud and other psychoanalysts. That's just how these people roll. If they can get you to take an action by triggering the unconscious fear of castration, they'll just do it. You'll never figure it out anyway. You can't even admit that you're afraid of death or castration or whatever. They know you repress these fears, and the fact that they are taboo and you repress them makes you more susceptible to the mind control. Freud's most famous book was on dream interpretation. Dreams are a symbolic representation of the unconscious. The elites have studied what the symbols mean and how they work. Artists have worked to paint in the language of dreams for hundreds of years. Hollywood, the media, and the advertisers are much more interested in talking to your unconscious mind than they are in speaking to the logical, reasoning, conscious mind. They whisper to you in the language of dreams to bypass logic and reason. They distract the conscious mind, just as the magician distracts your eyes from the trick. As time marches forward, the manipulation tactics become more advanced, while we become more deeply entranced. The manipulation is pervasive. In watching an hour of TV, you will be unconsciously manipulated several times. There is no TV without manipulation, even if it seems good. Children's cartoons are laced with subliminal embeds, symbolism, and archetypes. Even if you found something that was not, you would still get hit with mind control during the commercial. Our matrix, or false reality, is the fantasy image of the TV. It's given life as we reflect it in our perceptions. Each value promoted on TV is a program of the matrix, programmed by the intellectual elite. After all, it's called television programming, isn't it? And you're a consumer, right? Because that's your purpose. Don't believe me? Is it really a stretch? Do some research. Learn about archetypes, symbolism, and psychoanalysis. Read Wilson Bryan Key's books and learn about subliminal messages. You can see it with your own eyes, just as I have helped thousands be able to find subliminal messages. You can see the proof of mass manipulation and turn another theory into a proven fact. Don't waste your time on something you cannot even prove to yourself. I'm not trying to be a TV Nazi, but I do encourage you to watch as little as you can. When you do watch, use the time to find subliminal messages, archetypes, and symbolism. Question what value is being promoted. Identify stereotypes and consider why they act the way they do. Doing this allows you to consciously weigh what is meant for the unconscious and limit its harmfulness. If you want to know what the elite have planned, breaking down the propaganda is a good way to find out and can confirm what you already believe is true. The Judeo-Christian and secular views on the origin of man and the future of man are a striking contrast of worldviews. The Judeo-Christian view on the origin of man shows a man that was in an ideal situation, but because of disobedience, was cast out of that ideal situation, and are now in a situation that is often called fallen. Secular humanism, in contrast, is a human-centered philosophy that is optimistic on the nature of man. This view is based on man improving through science, reason, logic, and technology. The Judeo-Christian view shows man's governments as corrupt and almost always evil. In Christianity, so evil in fact that the largest government to the time kills God in the flesh, and in the end, man's governments would nearly destroy the world and fight against God himself. This is often called a dystopian view. On the other side, we see a future for man that will be a utopia once enough of man has become enlightened. This enlightenment is characterized by losing cultural identities such as religion, race, nationality, and any form of tribalism. These battle lines now are being blurred. As secular humanism dominated the 1900s, modern Christians have adapted much of secular humanism's ideals. The American Christians have failed to understand the proper role of government as defined by America's founders, or at the very least completely failed at communicating it. The people who embrace the classic American Christian's view on the role of government are now called paleoconservative. Both paleoconservative and modernist, or secular humanist, talk a lot about liberty and freedom, but they are actually talking about two opposing concepts of liberty and freedom. The heart of this conflict is easy to define. What are you seeking freedom from? What do you need liberating from? Who or what is your oppressor? These two opposing worldviews are seeking liberation from two entirely different entities. To quote Marxist humanist philosopher Erich Fromm, acting against God's orders means freeing himself from coercion, emerging from the unconscious existence of pre-human life to the level of man, acting against the command of authority, committing a sin in its positive human aspect, the first act of freedom. He is free from bondage of paradise, but he is not free to govern himself, to realize his individuality. This form of liberty in political theory is often called positive liberty. It strives to achieve the humanist objectives to eliminate race, nationality, religion, and even gender, which will create enlightenment and the possibility of a utopia. In contrast, America's founders were seeking freedom from government oppression. There no longer would be a king to rule, or an oppressive elite ruling class to dominate the people. Instead, the government would be restrained through three equal branches of federal government, and its limitations would be spelled out in the Constitution. The U.S. Bill of Rights is a list of things the government cannot ever do. This was a revolutionary concept in government, and this allowed for the individual to flourish and for America to prosper. However, this concept can only work with a moral people because of the amount of responsibility the individual has. John Adams, in a speech to the military in 1798, warned his fellow countrymen, stating, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It's wholly inadequate to the government of any other." That's John Adams, signer of the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and our second president. Noah Webster, author of the first American speller and the first dictionary, said, "The Christian religion, in its purity, is the basis, or rather the source, of all genuine freedom in government. And I am persuaded that no civil government of a republican form can exist and be durable in which the principles of that religion have not a controlling influence. Gouverneur Morris, a signer of the Constitution. For avoiding the extremes of despotism or anarchy, the only ground of hope must be on the morals of the people. I believe that religion is the only solid basis of morals, and that morals are the only possible support of free governments. Therefore, education should teach the precepts of religion and the duties of man towards God. Robert Winthrop, Speaker of the U.S. House. Men, in a word, must necessarily be controlled either by a power within them or by a power without them, either by the Word of God or by the strong arm of man, either by the Bible or by the bayonet. George Washington, First President. Religion and morality are the essential pillars of civil society. Benjamin Franklin, signer of the Declaration of Independence. Only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. So now we must look at how secular humanism is going to both decrease the cultural role of religion and increase freedom. First, they will replace what they see as a coercive religious culture with an alternate culture. I believe that this secular culture is not only more coercive, but more seductive as well. Most coercive uses of religion are not a fundamental of the scripture, but the product of a narcissistic leader using God for their own exploits. After all, I don't find "do unto others as you would have them do unto you" very coercive or seductive, but I do think that the concept is a foundation block of civil society. Let's contrast that with secular culture. Let's just use gangster rap. Assuming all culture is a form of propaganda, the object of this propaganda seems to be twofold. You encourage minorities to kill each other, and you imprison a portion of the minority population. Also, you break down the family, a pillar of moral society, promote abortion, commoditize the human body, and plenty of other things. If the humanists are ever going to get their utopia, they must eliminate biblical morality. But their utopia is other people's dystopia. The Christian utopia is created by each person treating others as equals and even putting them first. But what is the humanist utopia? Many people consider Plato's Republic as an early model for the humanist utopia. In college, Plato's Republic is a fundamental of the political sciences. My State Department friend even bought me a copy. This utopia is often illustrated or spoken of as Atlantis or the New Atlantis. In Plato's utopia, the population is governed by philosophers and scientists, not the rich and not the masses as in democracy. In the 20th century, Vladimir Lenin tried this in the newly formed Soviet Union. His utopia was to be a society completely run by logic and reason. Through technology such as electricity, they would build a modern society and turn its citizens to logical workers. They abolished religion, killed 1,200 priests, and taught atheism. They thought the masses would be uplifted to engineers to run this technical society. Common people would become great philosophers. But the only people who had technical skills were from the upper classes of before the revolution. Stalin purged Russia of these engineers in the 1930s and replaced them with faithful comrades. In the end, this resulted in a bureaucracy that, from Moscow, planned every aspect of life. The state exercised total control over social, political, and economic life. There was no private property. As we look back on the Soviet Union, Are we reminded of a logical and technical utopia? This is just one example of an attempt to make a secular humanist society. At the same time as the Soviet Revolution, America was embarking on its own secular humanist revolution. Protagoras said, "Man is the measure of all things," in his great humanist statement. Humanism is also a contrast to most paganism, which puts the earth itself above God and man. When Woodrow Wilson commissioned the Committee on Public Information, two of his advisors were Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, and Walter Lippmann, a founding member of the CFR and who is known to be sympathetic to communism. Let us compare these two men. Bernays was the father of PR, Lippmann the father of modern journalism. Bernays wrote the books Crystallizing Public Opinion and Propaganda. Lippmann wrote the book Public Opinion. Bernays wrote a book called Engineering Consent, while Lippmann used the term manufacture of consent. Bernays was an Austrian Jew. Lippmann was a German Jew. Bernays said, "As civilization becomes more complex, and as the need for invisible government has been increasingly demonstrated, the technical means have been invented and developed by which public opinion may be regimented. With the printing press and newspaper, the telephone, telegraph, radio, and airplanes, ideas can be spread rapidly and even instantaneously across the whole of America." He also said, "The American motion picture is the greatest unconscious carrier of propaganda in the world today. It is a great distributor for ideas and opinions. The motion picture can standardize the ideas and habits of a nation." Bernays wrote, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country." He also said, "We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. Also, our invisible governors are, in many cases, unaware of the identity of their fellow members in the inner cabinet." In his book, Public Opinion, Walter Lippmann said that the manufacture of consent is capable of great refinements no one, I think, denies. The process by which public opinions arise is certainly no less intricate than it has appeared in these pages, and the opportunities for manipulation open to anyone who understands the process are plain enough. As a result of psychological research, coupled with the modern means of communication, the practice of democracy has turned a corner. A revolution is taking place, infinitely more significant than any shifting of economic power. Under the impact of propaganda, not necessarily in the sinister meaning of the word alone, the old constants of our thinking have become variables. It's no longer possible, for example, to believe in the original dogma of democracy, that the knowledge needed for the management of human affairs comes up spontaneously from the human heart. In his book, he referred to the public as a great beast and a bewildered herd that needed to be guided by a governing class. He described the elite as a specialized class composed of experts and bureaucrats. According to Lippmann, the experts, who are often referred to as elites, are to be a machinery of knowledge that circumvents the primary defect of democracy, the impossible ideal of the omnicompetent citizen. The trampling and roaring herd has its function to be the interested spectators of action. Mass media and propaganda therefore are tools that must be used by the elites to rule the public without physical coercion. Lippmann's concept, manufacturing consent, was the opinion that since the public was not qualified to make important decisions, the elites would make the decisions and sell them to the public. If the Soviet version of secular humanism is represented in Orwell's 1984, then America's secular humanism is represented by the book A Brave New World. Since humanism believes only in logic and reason, and science has told them that man is an animal, secular humanism is forced by their own logic to view man as an animal. Sigmund Freud, Bernays' uncle, argued that man needed to be controlled. His irrational emotions could cause him to go into a crazed rampage, such as in riots, or manifest in nationalist movements, such as the Nazis who displaced Freud to England. It's not logical that a herd of animals can be responsible for themselves. They must be forced to submit. They must be told how to live, but not by an unchanging scripture, by a big brother who may not have your best interests in mind. We make laws to protect the innocent against immoral attackers. Secular humanist governments and societies are ripe with paranoia. Around every corner, everyone is the potential threat. Ironically, the secular humanist has created the threat by dismantling the moral fabric of society. So when you see Hollywood with their endless schemes to demoralize the public, you should understand that it's a formulated effort that inevitably will bring about a brave new world or an alternate police state. For all the religion haters who claim to be against a new world order, I expect that you think you can find an alternative. Anarchy's one. Have fun with that. Otherwise, I've seen a few people who respect Judeo-Christianity for its cultural necessity, but don't believe in God. Man's laws only infringe upon man's God-given rights. The only alternative to God-given rights are government-given rights. If a government gives you a right, it can also take it away. God-given rights cannot be taken away, not even by a government. I bet most of the atheists that watch this will not be objective enough to admit the term God-given rights is the most protective wording of our freedom. Then they make up the counterfeit version called natural rights. Sounds good, right, atheists? But wait, our God-given rights and laws are spelled out in the most published book in the world. Who wrote this great scripture of nature that also must be unchanging? Bugs Bunny? What are these laws of nature, and how can I read this great book? I mean, what exactly are the laws of nature? You have the right to kill, have sex, then die? So, no thanks on the natural rights. That seems like a abyss to me. So even though you hate Christians, and you think they are idiots who believe in fairy tales, you'll have to overcome some of your own ignorance. If you can't do that, you should go back and get on your side of the playing field. The New World Order is secular humanist. Its goals, among others, is to put an end to monotheistic religions. Ask yourself, atheists, which side should you be on? I encourage you, go. Join the New World Order. You belong with them. Man's laws only lead to tyranny. Hollywood has long been promoting its secular humanist world empire. If you'd watch Star Trek, you'd think it's a foregone conclusion. Have you ever tried to get through to one of these Star Trek world viewers? It's impossible. They think man will overcome everything through science and technology, then come together to dominate the universe. Do you really think everything is getting better and we're entering a golden age? This returns us to our fundamental difference. Are we improving and on the cusp of a great enlightenment? Or is the world about to financially collapse? bringing about wars on a scale never seen before, leading to man's ultimate act of rebellion against God. The entire world has been convinced that two economic systems, socialism and capitalism, are the only two choices for a modern economy. In my research, such a generalized statement cannot be true because of the complexity of the issues. The terms capitalism and socialism themselves are categories and not only one cohesive philosophy. Let us first take a look at socialism. Socialism is an economic system that is a reaction to capitalism in 19th century Europe. Socialism further breaks down into different political philosophies. The goals of socialism are common ownership of all capital, including property, resources, machines, and tools. The economy is planned as opposed to a market economy. All production and resources are to be used to meet public need. In its end, everything would be owned by everyone. The workers would be equals. There would be no buying or selling. Everyone would have free access to goods or services designed directly to meet their needs. And all work would be on a voluntary basis. At this point, the state withers away into a stateless society. It's to this end that every group on the left of the political spectrum works for. Marxist, Leninist, world socialists, utopians, and others think this can only be done on a global scale and cannot work in one isolated nation. Vladimir Lenin blames Soviet failures on the fact that they needed to trade with capitalist nations for certain commodities. Then there are National Socialists, who blend socialism with nationalism and isolationism. This is also sometimes called fascism. We ask that government undertake the obligation, above all, of providing citizens with adequate opportunity for employment and earning a living. The activities of the individual must not be allowed to clash with the interest of the community, but must take place within the confines and be for the good of all. Therefore, we demand an end to the power of financial interest. We demand profit sharing in big business. We demand a broad extension of care for the aged. We demand the greatest possible consideration of small business in the purchases of the national, state, and municipal governments. In order to make possible to every capable and industrious citizen the attainment of higher education and thus the achievement of a post of leadership, the government must provide an all-around enlargement of our system of public education. We demand the education at government expense of gifted children of poor parents. The government must undertake the improvement of public health by protecting mother and child, by prohibiting child labor, by the greatest possible support for all groups concerned with the physical education of youth. We combat the materialistic spirit within and without us, and are convinced that a permanent recovery of our people can only proceed from within on the foundation of the common good before the individual. This economically socialist and politically nationalist dictatorship, known as Nazism, and the Nazi Party are not on the right of the political spectrum. This is a lie, and I will not allow the socialists to deny their child. In order to prove if Hitler was on the left or right politically, we must first know what right or left really means. To illustrate the fatal flaws in the common idea of the political spectrum, I will show what public school attempted to pass off as a political spectrum. This is the political spectrum we were taught in public school. Radical is synonymous with cool, while reactionary was definitely not cool in high school. This spectrum is leftist propaganda. Now let's get a little closer to the truth. Here is the Nolan chart, which is used by libertarians. It's really hard not to end up as a libertarian when you take their quiz. I've created several tests to determine a person's political ideology. My most recent test is quite complex, but I will give it a quick overview. My evaluation uses the following three dynamics as a basis. The reason political spectrums are useless is because they are one-dimensional, on a scale between two extremes. The Nolan chart is two-dimensional with two sets of opposites. My political spectrum is three separate two-dimensional charts. This may seem too detailed, but there are hundreds of possible political ideologies, and no way that can be fit on a one-dimensional black to white spectrum. For instance, where do you fit a Christian anarchist or a libertarian socialist? My State Department friend mentioned that they use the same three dynamics to evaluate nations or groups. I've given several people this test, and I find the results to be very accurate. 2 State Department employees took my test, with interesting results, but I have no idea why they agreed to take the test. None of my questions are about issues. Every question is about the underlying belief or ideal that guides our judgment on issues. I end up with a great picture of where you will fall on any issue, depending on how it's worded. In socioeconomics, the first scale is motive. At one end we have profit, at the other end we have utilitarianism. The second scale is identity, which goes from individual to collective. So to analyze the Nazis, they were collectivist. The collective was the state. Everything was for the state. The state became God. Collectivism is always on the left. Individualism is always on the right. This is a fact when using the left-right paradigm. The Nazis put the state above profit. The only way they can be seen as right is right of communism, which is the furthest left. Notice a commune is a completely collective society. We are socialists. We are enemies of today's capitalist economic system for the exploitation of the economically weak with its unfair salaries, with its unseemly evaluation of a human being according to wealth and property instead of responsibility and performance. And we are all determined to destroy this system under all conditions. Adolf Hitler. It is thus necessary that the individual should finally come to realize that his own ego is of no importance in comparison with the existence of the nation, that the position of the individual is conditioned solely by the interest of the nation as a whole. Adolf Hitler. As socialists, we are opponents of the Jews, because we see in the Hebrews the incarnation of capitalism, of the misuse of the nation's goods. Collectivism is always on the left because it defines the left. Hitler's collective was the state. So how exactly are the Nazis far right, as we've always been told? There was some courting of religion, but by far the Nazis were more humanist than theist. A great example is Hitler's eugenics program, which was based on Darwinism. Nationalism is on the left because it elevates the collective state above family or individual. Everything is done for the collective state, which is nationalism. The only scale that nationalism is on the right of is nationalism versus globalism. But that's nothing more than a choice between National Socialist and World Socialists. If you think the Nazis were bad, just wait till the World Socialists take power. It'll be the worst Holocaust in all human history. The final segment of socialism I will cover is democratic socialism. They are a contrast against revolutionary socialism. They think that peacefully, through democracy, they can bring about socialism. After witnessing the horrors that Leninism, Stalinism, Nazism, and the Marxist nightmare genocides in China by Mao and Pol Pot in Cambodia, this is really the only way to distance themselves from their atrocities. The goal of world socialism is still their purpose. I think they will soon overthrow capitalism as the world economy collapses. As wonderful as the socialist utopia may sound, we must face reality. The socialist society is incompatible with individual liberty. This is because to do away with private property, you must take private property. The socialist society must take wealth to create equality. The socialist society must take your business and give it to the collective. You cannot own a business. You cannot own land. The price for everything is set and there's no competition. Socialist society cannot work unless everyone is on board with it. You will either be killed, re-educated, or at least forcibly relocated. You cannot keep your rights under socialism. You cannot choose your job. You cannot opt out. It cannot work if individuals have the right to own capital, which are tools, machines, land, resources, or any other means to produce on your own. In socialism, you cannot be self-sufficient because you are not allowed to produce for yourself. Socialism is codependence. Everyone is dependent upon the state. Now hopefully you're seeing the irony here. They claim the ultimate goal is for the state to wither away, yet all power is given to the collective as a whole. Hello, Marxists. The collective is the state. It's we the people that collectively make up the state. It's completely asinine to concentrate all power in the state's hands to eliminate the state. For people who claim to be so logical and reasonable, I think I might have found a flaw. But I do have a wonderful diet plan to sell you. You eat and eat and eat all day, every day, and one day all the fat just withers away. Hey, if you wanted the state to wither away, why not just limit government in the first place? Socialism makes the assumption that people will put the good of society above everything else, and will happily work to that end. But you cannot force people to be good, just as you cannot force them to be free. First of all, we don't all agree on what's good. I don't think purging society of all who refuse to comply is good, but apparently socialists do. So there will always be discontent, because we all do not share a hive mind that's always in agreement. Socialism must then work against individuality. Considering the word socialism was created as a contrast to the word individualism, this is not a debatable point. Socialism then must inherently stifle invention because it does not respect the creative power of the individual. Without credit and praise, the individual will not be motivated to create for the state. This aspect of socialism is narrated in Ayn Rand's book, Anthem, but that is not an endorsement of Rand. What if the human collective decided everyone's dinner each night? What they choose may not be right for you. Maybe you're on a diet or allergic to an ingredient. The individual can always make his own choices better than the collective. Look at what is being promoted in media. Collectivism is always shown as such a wonderful thing, while individualism is despised. Moving on to capitalism, we have another species and not a breed. Capitalism as it is today does not hold to the original idea that the capital is in private or the individual's hands. For instance, a state capitalist economy is where the state owns the capital through nationalized business and state-owned corporations. Sounds a bit like Nazism and fascism, right? A great modern example of this is China. State capitalism is a socialist perversion of capitalism and is collectivist, not at all individualistic. This is usually monopolistic or anti-competitive. Then we have corporate capitalism, when a private business sells shares or parts of itself to shareholders. It's called going public. This public is the collective and not individualistic. You may attempt to say that individuals still own it, but that's just semantics. People own stock, banks own stocks, mutual funds own stocks, pension funds own stock. Public corporations are collective entities. Look at the corporate structure. It's a hive mind. It's a telling example of collectivism. As your boss tells you when you try and think for yourself, and he says, there's no I in team. While the corporate perversion of the free market may have brought about Marxism, freedom can only be found in individualism. Modern capitalism started with Adam Smith's book, The Wealth of Nations, in 1776. He argued the mercantile system in Great Britain was lacking. He advocated allowing the individual to seek his own self-interest by removing government control over the economy. Ideally, the government's only purpose would be to guard the level playing field, which is equal opportunity, but not equal results. And the government must protect the individual's rights. True Christians could possibly handle the great personal responsibilities of capitalism, but immorality will quickly bring about greed and corruption. Thus, the government's role is to maintain the rules that protect the individual from unfair practices by competitors and damages from deceptive products. So, for example, if I made a product that violated individual rights, such as by spying on you, or for the purpose of mind control, I would be liable because I have violated your rights. Here's an example of anti-competitive practices that are occurring right now. Big box corporate collectives such as Walmart or Best Buy are using their anti-capitalistic level of influence to lobby Congress to impose disproportionate regulations on individual eBay sellers. They fear competition, while we are sharpened by it. I believe that corporations are not only unnecessary to capitalism, but that they are destructive to it. Don't get too confused here. I'm actually further to the political right, philosophically, to allow for corporations, because the individual is the supreme ideal. The collectivist corporation's legal basis is anti-individualistic, and I argue unconstitutional. First, the corporation is granted limited liability for its members. This is bad for the individual because not only does removing personal responsibility undermine capitalism, but it limits the justice that a victim may seek who has been harmed by a product. As an individual, if I made a product and I sold it to someone, I would be personally held responsible. This fundamentally undermines the level playing field and gives the collective corporation an unfair advantage over the individual. A corporation has been given the status and rights as a legal person. However, a corporation cannot have morality. This collective's sole purpose is to make money. Its opponents often say that if it's a person, that person fits all the characteristics of a psychopath. If you doubt my image of the corporation as anti-individual, tell me what happens when you let your boss know that you've found a better way to do something. 9 out of 10 times you'll be told just to do the job how the higher-ups want it, or just ignore your suggestion. The people who make the decisions in corporations are so far out of touch with the workers and the production line that they hardly ever make a good decision. It's a lot like the Soviet bureaucracy. Private business can make anything a corporation can make. Just because you desire a secure world is no excuse to keep these collectivist entities that have destroyed the free market. They are too big to fail because they are a weakness. The more competition we have, the lower prices will be, and the more innovation there will be. Job competition means higher wages and more productive workers. Small, family, and individual business is the most competitive form of business. They are decentralized and local generally. You have more choice. Corporations run media, which puts forth the secular humanist agenda. Madison Avenue has been stamping out what they call the Puritan mindset since the 1920s. The corporation has attacked individuality and replaced it with a plastic imitation individuality. Now, to fit into the herd, we are told we need to buy our identity in the form of products. Brands are for livestock. What your favorite brand is nothing more than the identity of your collective herd. Reject brand loyalty like you reject socialism, and vice versa. You are both just two wings of collectivism. As the last drops of Christian morality bleed out of capitalism, corporations will have made marks a profit, and the true way of individualism and biblical morality, the only freedom in this world, will be lost. You need to stop viewing the corporation and capitalism as one and the same. It's a lie. The free market is individualistic, and the corporation is collectivist. Oh, and let's not forget what the U.S. founders thought of the corporation. The largest company of the time was the East India Company. In 1773, they lobbied the British Parliament to pass the Tea Act. The U.S. colonists found out about this and triggered the Boston Tea Party. This East India Tea Company became the model for corporations. They lobbied government for the tea tax exactly like Walmart lobbies Congress to overtax my small business. The corporation is the straw man set up for capitalism. The corporation's sins are falsely placed on free market capitalism, instead of the true enemy, collectivism. After the U.S. Revolution, the states had to figure out what to do with the corporate law basis that we inherited from Britain. The founders saw corporations such as the East India Company as a state within a state. Many founders, such as James Madison, were extremely critical of banking corporations as well. He worried these banking corporations would create a banking class. Early corporations were limited by U.S. states in the amount of time they could exist, the amount of money they could have, and they were limited in where they could operate. They did not resemble the modern corporation. Adam Smith, who is seen as the founder of capitalism, saw an ideal market that was comprised of buyers and sellers. In The Wealth of Nations, he made it clear his capitalist society can only work if no buyer or seller is large enough to influence the market price. The corporation drives itself to monopolize an industry, but Adam Smith was fanatical in his opposition to monopolies. He believed trade secrets confer a monopoly advantage and are contrary to the free market. Adam Smith disliked both governments and corporations. Adam Smith made it clear that the capital would be in the same location that the owner lived. He then used the term the invisible hand for the only time, saying that localization was required for the invisible hand to turn self-interest into optimal public benefit. The owners of capital were supposed to be directly involved in business management. His capitalism was local, not global. You corporate globalists are the antithesis of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. You defenders of the corporation talk so much about capitalism, but you don't even know what it really is. During the Cold War, fear-based mind control was used on the American public. They were in perpetual fear of the evil empire. Soviet communism threatened the world, and we were told we could shop and buy our way to victory. All we were really doing was adapting another form of collectivism, corporatism. Now, at the end of American capitalism, we can see our failure, but we don't understand the reason. Our main streets are boarded up, the mom and pop businesses wiped off the earth. Giant corporations account for more and more of your purchases each year. All rural business has vanished, since they can rely on a car to take them to the Walmart in town. The local supply chain, once the rural lifeline, is bled out, leaving rural people dependent in a crisis. After corporate capitalism fails, support true free market capitalism over socialism. Here are some examples showing the corrupted state of capitalism. Private for-profit prison corporations lobby Congress against marijuana decriminalization because less criminals means less profit. They also promote tough-on-crime legislation, such as 3 strikes laws. Since they make money on punishing criminals only, they do not lobby for anything that will lower crime, only for what will fill prisons. Alcoa Aluminum produced the most fluoride in the world in the 1930s, because it's a waste byproduct of aluminum manufacturing. Apparently, they were not selling enough fluoride as rat poison, and they went on a propaganda campaign to get fluoride put in drinking water. Alcoa got their own lawyer control over the Public Health Service, and the American public has been forcibly medicated ever since. Fluoride is a toxic poison, and it causes a condition known as dental fluorosis. In recent studies, 32% of American children have dental fluorosis. Those levels of fluoride exposure are thought to increase bone cancer and osteoporosis. Pharmaceutical companies give kickbacks to doctors for prescribing drugs. Doctors then overprescribe drugs for conditions that do not even exist, such as ADHD. You don't medicate your child because you're pathetic and you sat them in front of a TV the first 5 years of their life while gorging yourself on high fructose corn syrup and pink slime burgers. You've crippled your child for life by giving them a fake condition to blame all their problems on. Okay, moving on. Vaccine manufacturers, who are often immune to legal action from damage their products may have caused, use fear tactics to get their products into schools, then deceive the public into thinking it's mandatory to vaccinate your children. But just in the US, 11,000 reports of adverse reaction to vaccines are reported each year. 10 to 15% involve hospitalization, permanent disability, or are considered life-threatening. About 2% of the reactions are deaths. It's widely suspected that the reactions are underreported because most people do not realize the danger in vaccinations. The parents of a baby murdered by vaccines should have the right to sue vaccine manufacturers for making a product that kills and selling it as something healthy. Then we have companies like Monsanto, who play God with genetically engineered seeds that have not been proven safe as they attempt to undo man's punishment of garden toil. Countless documentaries have examined how Monsanto has patented its seed genetics. Then when the wind blows the GMO pollen to non-GMO farms, Monsanto tests the non-GMO fields, and if it finds its genetics, they sue the farmer and make them pay Monsanto. My opinion is that Monsanto should have to pay the farmer for polluting their fields with Monsanto's crappy modified genetics. We have example after example of large corporations buying up patents and inventions Then they bury them so their current technology remains the standard. Time after time, the collective tramples the individual. To restore the free market, all we need to do is restore the individual to his rightful place as the sovereign under God. The collective must have no power over the responsible individual. I believe the core purpose of government, in the American sense, is to protect the individual rights not only from other individuals, but from collectives such as corporations and even from government itself. Instead, we have Democrats who sometimes go after corporations, but empower government over the individual, and Republicans who sometimes weaken government power while empowering corporations over the individual. My political ideology is easily contrasted against these two collectivist ideologies. Simply put, the family unit and the individual is the core and most powerful unit in society. We must empower this unit while removing that power from collectives such as government, corporations, and all other collective unions. The collective's power is always at the expense of the individual. As an example, let's look at homeowners associations. These are usually corporations formed by real estate corporations. They make rules and regulations on how property owners are allowed to conduct themselves and use their own property. One early use of these collectives was to keep blacks out of white neighborhoods. Think about it. That equals another whole level of government, since they govern with rules and regulations. Only guess what? They're not bound by the constitutional restrictions on government. If they can tell you what you can and cannot do on and with your own property, you have no property rights. The only way they could tell you what to do is if it's their property. You cannot sign away your property rights because they are God-given and a fundamental of a truly free society. God gave man free will. We can choose to do right. We can choose to be good. These collectivist entities seek to remove our free will and force us to be good. Their idea of good. Organized religions are collectives that often disempower the individual. The Pharisees, who imposed layers of tradition on ancient Jews, were scolded by Jesus. Good works are valueless if you are forced to do them, or if you are doing them for advantage, such as a tax break. True Christianity empowers the individual, in that Jesus is the only mediator between God and man. God can communicate with us individually. But time and time again, the collective, organized church has attempted to impose extra-biblical rules upon us. Just Google Pope or Catholic Church. It's this straw man that secular humanists are always attacking and falsely portraying. What the church has done is actually what Christianity has done. The true church is each individual Christian who is to be an ambassador of Christ. The first example of collectivism in the Bible is at the Tower of Babel in Babylon. People all came together, one language, one religion. According to Revelation, in the end, this collectivist mystery Babylon system partners with Satan for one last shot at a world system. Everyone will be under one economic system, and everyone will have a mark. That is a pledge of allegiance to the godlike leader. Sounds very similar to world socialism. Look at how North Koreans look up to its leaders as gods. The ending of the Cold War has had an effect of empowering democratic socialism. Marx's 10 planks of communism have been put into effect in America over the past 100 years. The America you see today that is so dysfunctional is not the America of individual liberty that once was. The secular humanists swept in and destroyed our Christian morality, which in turn unleashed greed in our free markets. It was really morality that allowed the free market to operate. That was replaced with the corruption that the materialism of social Darwinism must bring. This, then, is the catalyst to institute socialist policies. The government under socialism naturally fills the void left with God removed. The state assumes more power than God, even trampling our free will. Problem, reaction, solution. Since it is the secular humanist, social Darwinist, and socialist that destroyed our moral foundation, I think that we should not look to them for the solution. When you strip away the collectivist systems, you are left with individuals and families who are more than capable to run our family economies, and this will bring about the most ingenuity, competition, and a higher standard of living for all people. The only thing needed is that most of the people would have to put others' needs in balance with their own, which happens to be the core ideal of true Christianity. In my ideology, you would be welcome to own a piece of land and start a commune. We would not have Marxist property taxes or government licensing, so we would require nothing of you other than the commune being voluntary, because you cannot violate others' rights. But under Marxism, I would have to be re-educated or killed, because the godless have no concern for free will. If they truly believe that humans are good and can be civil, they would support individualism. They would free the individual to flourish and prosper. In the Bible, individuals own capital. This is the natural and normal state of man. Let's say I'm a shepherd. With my extra meat and wool, I will barter. I may barter for a tool from the blacksmith, or I may barter for a table from the carpenter. Bartering is capitalism. I trade the product of my capital for the product of another individual's capital. This is essentially what a small business is. We use money as a medium of exchange because of money's liquidity, meaning you can quickly exchange it for any product instead of a product the seller needs. In my small business, I use intellectual capital and a few machines, which are also capital, to add value to already existing products. I sell the products for money and exchange that money for family needs. Any individual can do this in an individual capitalist society. All you need is motivation, confidence, and some capital. No need to have a boss, other than maybe to earn startup capital. Being a worker is really just a step to finding your purpose. All the crying the Marxists do about the workers is nothing more than self-pity. In a free market, if you're a worker all your life, you chose to be a worker all your life. You chose because you sat around all your time off watching TV. You chose to get in debt instead of using your capital wisely. Some workers have chose the security of a weekly paycheck over stepping up and doing something themselves. I have way more sympathy for someone who tried and failed and ended up on the street than some worker who is crying about his position in a capitalist society. Now that socialism has embraced globalism over nationalism and democracy over dictatorship, and out of the flames of capitalism's planned destruction, democratic socialism is rising to bring order out of chaos. It's a mixture of iron and clay. The people's opinions are molded by media in democracy like clay, mixed with the iron fist of Marxist collectivism. I don't think we have the time or the will to reform capitalism before the interdependent economies are crushed by debt and corruption. Americans are too busy being entertained and dumbed down to do anything about the death of individual liberty and God-given rights. So prepare to be dependent or defend independence. Will you give up your individual rights and become one